All right, welcome back. Coach John here with freedomnutritioncoaching.com. You can, of course, find me at freedomnutritioncoach.com if you want to learn more about what it is that I do. And before I dive into today's topic, I also want to share with you that I do offer 3 free 7-day challenges to help you on your goals. So freedomnutrition.rocks/7-day challenge, all one word. And that'll get you access to End Emotional Eating, Build Your Roadmap, and Fat Loss Fundamentals. So 3 really awesome free courses that I offer. So diving into today's topic, we're going to talk about how to curb your cravings. So cravings can be difficult to deal with when we're trying to create change in our lives. So let's say you want to lose some weight, and cravings are kind of like that obstacle or that speed bump that keeps kind of tripping you up. And so today I want to take you through a 4-step process really to help you have a toolkit to navigate these. And really what I'd like you to learn or take away from this is just a feeling of being empowered, knowing that cravings can often feel like they're like out of control, but this is your opportunity to take back control from the cravings. And so actually I'm kind of curious. I'd like to hear from you. When cravings hit, what do you find yourself reaching for? For me, I'm kind of a salty guy. So when the evening rolls around, I definitely find myself wanting to reach for something salty and crunchy, aka chips. And usually it's going to be after my little fella's in bed. Maybe my wife and I sit down, spend some time together, and out come the chips and salsa. So that's kind of the thing that I find myself craving or wanting to reach for. And you can see there's kind of a connection here between, relaxation and maybe spending a bit of time with my wife and, kids in bed and that kind of thing. Right. So, but what's kind of interesting about that is kind of thinking about how and when we experience those cravings, what it is we find ourselves reaching for. And so maybe that's another question I'd like to ask you. How often do you, and this is something for you to kind of reflect on, how often do you experience cravings? Do they happen for you at certain times a day? And actually, you know what? Let's take one step back and say, well, what is the difference between hunger and cravings? Because I think that's a helpful thing to cover. So craving is something that's very specific. It's like chocolate or cookies or chips or so on. And I like to refer to this as above the neck hunger, So it's something that we feel up here, but it's not actually a physiological requirement for our body needing food. Whereas hunger is actually pretty non-specific. Basically any food's going to do. So I call that like below the neck hunger, and it's like, all right, boiled potatoes with mashed vegetables. Cool. I'm hungry. I'll eat that right now. So that's physical hunger. So the way that we can think about cravings is really they're a behavior pattern that gets wired into the brain. And so when we think about how we build a behavior pattern or a habit, it starts with a cue. Then the craving happens. Then we take the action on that craving and we get a reward. So for example, I feel stressed. Ooh, I'd really like some chocolate right now. We go ahead and eat that chocolate, and now our brain feels better. And that teaches our brain that, hey, you know what? Whenever I feel something like this, I eat chocolate and I feel better. And our brain starts to make a connection to something like chocolate. And so we might not realize, but when we get a craving for chocolate, actually, it's just an indication that our body is saying, hey, I'm feeling stressed right now. And I need something different. And so when you get cravings, I really want to encourage you to kind of just be curious about them. What do I notice? What do I feel? And so the way to think about it, and junk food, junk food is beautifully engineered to satisfy cravings. All right. Junk food is basically concentrated calories. It's amazing how many calories can get jammed into junk food products, and they're engineered that way on purpose. Now, the thing is, we're hardwired to want this kind of stuff in our biology, right? Whenever something is calorie dense, we're hardwired to seek out more of it. Now, if you think about it in nature, you're going to find things like nuts or the fat on animals or fruit. Those are really your concentrated sources of calories. But what we've done with junk food products is we've taken that and we've like over engineered it or hyper engineered it to the point that we now have these products that and they really hijack our brain. It's almost like they're playing with a cheat code here. So thinking about like what you eat, if you're eating something you crave, whether it's a bag of chips or chocolate or something, like how do you eat that? How do you consume that? Is it something that, I used to eat it like I joke that, my wife used to tell me you can come up for air kind of thing, so it's like the craving was really for me like an uncomfortable feeling that I wanted to erase with the food. That was really what was going on at that time. And so, I would consume this food like it was my last meal, or like I hadn't eaten a meal in a month or something like that. And I would often consume it like extremely quickly, like, and not even coming up for air. I kind of chuckle thinking about it because, it looks a little bit different. Pardon me. It looks a little bit different now when I, maybe I take a little handful of chips and I kind of eat them one at a time and make them last for a really long time. But it is kind of interesting to think about, like, what are our are our behaviors around foods that we crave? Do we mow through them like a wood chipper going through a tree, or do we take our time, decide, well, if I'm going to eat this treat and indulge, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to savor every bite of it, I want to make it last, that kind of thing. Um, Anyway, speaking of FAST, it's also an acronym that I use, and this is really kind of this four-step process I'm wanting to share with you in terms of how to deal with cravings. And so, the first letter in FAST is F, which, yeah, great, I can spell, which stands for feel, right? And really, what we want to do is, like, when a craving hits, kind of get curious about it. And this is something that I often talk about when I'm working with clients, saying Lifestyle 180, is we just speak about having this curiosity about what's happening. So it seems like very often we are kind of conditioned to, we feel something uncomfortable, quick, make that feeling go away. That's a problem. Something's wrong. You think about, hey, if you're a kid and you're crying and mom gives you a cookie or something like that to make you stop crying. Well, what that does is that teaches us that, hey, don't feel what you're feeling. If you feel something uncomfortable, make it go away, and food's a way to make that go away. So you see how we can start to make that connection. And so, what happens is we kind of end up lacking a little bit of resilience to feeling uncomfortable emotions, and we condition ourselves or teach ourselves. And the moment I feel something uncomfortable, I can use food to make that uncomfortable feeling going away. And so what I'm encouraging you to do here is actually take a step back and say, well, let me feel something here. I want to, what is it that I'm feeling? And where am I feeling it in my body? Is it my pit of my stomach? Is it in my chest? Am I feeling tension in my shoulders? Like, what am I feeling? Is my jaw tight? So getting curious about the sensations that you might be experiencing in your body, and you just kind of get curious about it. And, because if we think about like a craving, it's almost like it is like experiencing some kind of tension, you know, I want something, but I don't. I want something, but I'm aware that it's not helpful for me. And so, junk food is ultimately like the easy answer to dealing with those cravings. And so, the second letter in FAST, because I can spell, is A, which I use the word accept. Now, in this situation here, what's really interesting is we don't actually choose our emotions. And when you take like a step back and just think about that for a moment, so we don't choose the emotions. Now, isn't that interesting? Because very often we will even feel guilty sometimes for the emotions or the feelings that we have. How about that? Now, where do we, and maybe we don't have an answer for this, but it's like, where did we learn to feel guilty about having specific emotions? Now, I'm not suggesting that we always want to act on what that emotion is, but I think it's important to understand that we don't choose our emotions. Because if we did, we'd probably just choose like happy and joyful all the time, or excited, or, we wouldn't choose like deliberately like anger or sad or things like that. So we don't choose our emotions. And so, when we're feeling a craving for something, and there's maybe this emotional sensation in our body, it's like, give place for it, accept it, and say, hey, this is something I'm feeling right now. And I like to think about emotions kind of like that check engine light. So, on the dashboard of your car, that little yellow light that comes on and says, hey, something's wrong. It doesn't actually tell you what's wrong, it just tells you that something needs your attention. And so, if we can think about those emotions a little bit like that check engine light, it's like, hey, something needs your attention right now. And so I think that's really, really important. And you know what? The other part of this is when we accept these emotions that we didn't choose, and we allow ourselves to be present, even when it's an uncomfortable emotion or sensation. We're starting to build resilience in one sense, but the other thing we're doing is we're actually relieving some of the pressure, right? Because some of the pressure we feel is, oh, I feel something uncomfortable. I need to make this go away right now. But actually, what we're doing with accept is we're giving place for that emotion, and we're relieving the pressure of needing to make that emotion disappear right away. So the third one I've got is S. Third letter in fast is S, for speak, and it's really about um, putting words to what you feel. And this is an interesting one because it's not necessarily that you have to. Well, and I know I call it speak because I want it to be a clever acronym, but I mean it could be writing down as well. It's producing language around what we feel. And it doesn't have to be perfect what you say. You don't have to get it exactly right, but it's like taking what we feel in our head and saying, I'm gonna put this on paper. I'm gonna bring this into the world and start to try to understand it a little bit better. If you have someone you like that or that you trust, a trusted friend or someone you're in a relationship with, a spouse or a partner, and you can just say, this is what I'm feeling right now. And as we do that, this can actually help us to understand what we're really looking for. Because when you think about a craving, so I've talked about it like above the neck hunger. In other words, we don't have a biological need for chocolate, or we don't have a biological need for potato chips or things like that, right? So we don't have that. What we have is an uncomfortable feeling here, and a learned response that we are um, that we've learned that if I eat something, it makes this negative feeling or this uncomfortable feeling go away. So when we start to put language around what it is that we're feeling, it can also help us to understand, what am I really looking for? Am I lonely? Am I sad? Am I bored? Am I anxious? Am I frustrated? What am I feeling right now? And by putting language to that, so we go from like feel, accept to now putting language to it, that can really help us to understand what it is that we're really looking for, what this craving's actually about. Because very rarely is that craving actually about the food itself. It's about what that food allows us to maybe escape from. And so the fourth one is time. And in a sense, this one's pretty simple. It's about creating space. So when we experience an uncomfortable urge, an uncomfortable sensation like an emotion, the biggest part of that emotional peak, if you will, really lasts less than 10 minutes. And so emotions and cravings are often like waves. They kind of come in, they peak, and then they crash and fall away. And that process takes maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And so if we think about like, oh, I've really got a craving for this thing here, um, we can say, well, you know what? Why don't I check back in 10 minutes and kind of see where I'm at, and go do something else. Go distract yourself. Drink a glass of water. Go for a walk. Play a game on your phone. Just go distract yourself from that and let the time pass. Because if we zero in and we start to pay attention to the craving and put it under the microscope, then we really start to sort of amplify the sensation. But if we just say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to let this pass, and 10 minutes goes by, you're going to find yourself engaged in doing something else. And so ultimately what we're trying to do here is use this feel, accept, speak, and time, this little acronym. And I like this idea that we can kind of disarm our cravings, and we can disarm them fast, which is kind of a clever way to say that. And I'm just going to drop this up here. I got a couple more things I want to share with you, but I do have, as I mentioned at the beginning, this 7-day course where you can end emotional eating. It's a free 7-day course that I take you through to help you step by step go through that, and you can find that at freedomnutrition.rocks/7-day challenge, all one word. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of other things here that can really help. So if we think about trying to sort of willpower our way through cravings, that can be a strategy, but willpower is a finite resource, and it's not one that we can always rely on. And so I think to myself, well, why don't I just make my life easier and use my willpower once instead of 100 times a day? You know, if I put a bowl of chocolate M&Ms on the counter, every time I walk past them, I'm probably going to grab a handful of them. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I walk past and think, no, I better not. No, I better not, and so on. But the moment that I break down and reach into that bowl and grab it, I'm going to think that my willpower failed me. And I could have walked past it 100 times, and 99 times out of 100 said no. Yet at that one time that I put my hand in the bowl and start reaching for those M&Ms, I think somehow, okay, my willpower is broken. And ultimately, it's no. It's just a case that it actually just ran out. And so it's easier to say no once in the store than it is to say no 100 times a day at home. The other one here, we'll call it number 6, I guess, because I've shared 6 things with you, or this will be the 6th one, is sleep. So sleep is really, really powerful in terms of emotional regulation. So when we start to be sleep deprived, I know a thing or two about that, being a dad of a toddler who doesn't actually sleep all that great. It does make emotional regulation more difficult. We don't have as much energy because our batteries aren't quite as charged up. So when that's the case, it's really difficult for us to regulate what we're feeling. And so we also have kind of like, in a sense, less thinking power available to us, if I put it that way. So what that means for us is it means we're going to default more to emotional decision making. That's that impulsive decision making. I want to satisfy something right now, right here in this moment. And so getting better quality sleep, whatever that looks like for you, doing whatever steps you can to prioritize sleep in whatever situation you're in. You're not necessarily going to have perfect, but whatever you can do to make your sleep better means you're going to experience less cravings. And the last thing I'll share with you really is about getting into a regular eating rhythm. When I was in the Navy, we used to eat like clockwork. At 7 a.m. Breakfast, 10 a.m. soup, noon was like lunchtime, 2:30 break, 5 o'clock dinner, and then the cooks would often leave something on the evening for those who were on evening shifts to have something to grab as they passed by. And what was interesting is I would come home off the ship, and my wife was like, "I can't keep up with you. You just want to eat all these times." Well, my brain had been taught to sort of eat at these intervals, and this is what I kind of found myself looking for. But it's helpful to create some kind of eating rhythm like that. And I think spacing meals about every 4 to 6 hours. And why I say that little 4-hour window, that's and not snacking in between. Now, why we say that is because that little 4-hour window, that allows us to kind of get through the majority of the carbohydrates we might have consumed and actually switch over to burning some fat for fuel, which is helpful. But if we eat every 2 to 3 hours, we don't really give ourselves an opportunity to switch over from burning carbohydrates to burning fat for fuel. And we want to get our body to be a little bit more metabolically flexible. I like to call it dual fuel. So the ability to switch back and forth. So that's where that 4 hour gap is helpful. But other than sleep times, when you go 8 or 10 hours or whatever, throughout the day, I encourage you not really to go beyond about that 6 hour mark, because as we get past about 6 hours, and this is kind of a rule of thumb I have, but it's also an observation I've had from working with hundreds of clients, that really after that 6 hour mark, we kind of start to experience more cravings. We start to justify poor food decisions and things like that. And so it's just a little bit better for us to say, okay, I want to sort of cap it at about 6 hours, that sort of gap between meals. And what this also does actually is it encourages us to eat sufficient food at mealtime. And usually at mealtime, we're going to include like protein, we're going to include vegetables, things that sit in our stomach and keep us full for longer and keep us feeling satisfied. Because the thing is with junk food, like not many people crave broccoli. I really haven't met someone, except for maybe the occasional pregnant woman who has pregnancy-based cravings, that would crave something like broccoli, for example. We crave calorie-dense, hyper-palatable foods like chips, chocolate, cookies, donuts, cake, that sort of stuff. That's the thing that we crave. And so if we can eat sufficient food at mealtime, because again, we're not really eating protein and vegetables for snacks, or very rarely is that something we're doing. Occasionally we might, but usually those vegetables getting dipped in, in some kind of dressing. But, going back to eating more at mealtime, keeping us full for longer means we're less likely to be experiencing cravings. So really just creating a more steady eating rhythm. And so ultimately, I hope that you find this helpful. Just to recap, fast, feel, accept, speak, and time. That 4-step method for disarming cravings and really helping you to create some space. And of course, once again, just one more plug for this, that this emotional eating course. If it's something you find that you're struggling with and you'd like a little bit of help with it, within this course, I actually wanted to share it with you here, and I'll just show you a little bit about this, where you can find it. Should have planned this beforehand. There we go. Okay, so if you hop over to that, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see this 7-day challenge site here, and if you scroll down, what you'll find is a little bit of preamble sharing with you a bit about what this is about, and then the 3 challenges: so end emotional eating, fat loss fundamentals, and build your roadmap. So this code here, 7day-EEE, that's the code that you would use, that you would plug in down here. You send your name, email address, and in this voucher code spot, you would put that. Oops, not that one. 7-day dash EEE. So you put that in there, and that just means so you don't pay for it. It's a course that I deliver to you through my software automatically, and you create an account, and I send you a welcome email, and you're off to the races. So that's a 7-day challenge there. So if it's something that you would like to There we go. I'm back. If that's something you'd like to some help with, I obviously I'm biased because I put this together, but I actually think it's a really great course to help people navigate this. So, anyways, just to take it home, I really hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you have something you can take away from this, where you feel like, yes, I know what I can do to deal with cravings. I have other tools in my toolbox that don't necessarily mean I have to, indulge every single craving that I hit. It's not the end of the world. You do have this within you to do it. So really, I appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you being a part of it again, and wish you all the best.